Good evening, councillors and staff and those in the gallery. Councillor Parry. Welcome to our reconvened council meeting. Attendance's apologies. I think there's only one from Mr Bishop. Okay. Leave of absence I have nil. Declarations of financial and proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality are as per declared on the 12th of May. Notice for motion which previous notice has been given, and we go straight to C1.2. It's Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, my motion is to resolve that. I'll just pause while the councillor gets settled. Okay.
You're timing this, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Well, it won't take long for this councillor, trust me. The council resolved to take a short 10-minute recess during any council briefing, council agenda, forum, council meeting or committee meeting that continues past 2 hours. The exact time of the recess will be determined by the presiding member depending on the proceedings at the time. And the reason is to ensure ongoing health, safety and comfort of councillors and staff members, members of the public in accordance with the council and committee meetings. A short comfort break should be allowed at any meeting that goes past 2 hours.
Seconder, Councillor Parry. Anyone against?
Amendment.
Okay, let's hear your amendment.
To extend the adjournment time of meetings to 10:10.
Mover and seconder? No, I don't. I just.
It maintains a 4-hour meeting.
Councillor Conger, as a mover?
No, I don't think so, Mr Mayor.
As in, you're not accepting the amendment?
No.
Councillor Parry? No. Look, you need to move it and you need a seconder.
Yes, I'm moving the amendment then, Mr Mayor.
Okay. And a seconder? You wish to debate it?
Well, it looks like there's opposition, so yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Look, it's fairly straightforward, councillors. If we're taking a short 10-minute break, it seems entirely reasonable, as we've recently decided to limit our meetings to always finish at 10 o'clock, that if we're reducing the time for business in a meeting by 10 minutes, we extend the adjournment time of meeting by 10 minutes to 10:10. I think it's only reasonable. It means that there'll be very slightly less likelihood of the meeting being adjourned and resumed. So I think it's just basic productivity and good working practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scanlon, as the seconder.
I'd just like to add that it's important to allow everyone to have their voice on council and shortening the meeting. Even though it's only 10 minutes, may be a very important part of debate, and I think it's important to maintain the 4 hours of council meeting. Thank you.
Speaker against, Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I love words like good working practice. I can't recall at the stroke of 10 the presiding member banging down the gavel and where the word is and or if or could or may or should is then interrupted and we all go home. The council meeting went to, I think, 20 past 10 last week. So we had more than 10, more to 20. So unless someone can tell me that we're going to be in a position of saying the meetings will conclude on us an if, a, am, I, are, sure, no, thanks, whatever, at 10 past 10, I go, yeah, fine. But we can't do that because if we're in midstream of debating an item, it goes to the conclusion of that item.
Any other speakers for or against the motion? None. Councillor Johnson, you wish to close? Okay. Those in favour of the amendment? Councillor Scanlon, Richardson, Johnson, Badovnik, and all the rest are against. The motion fails. Go back to Councillor Conger's motion. I've a mover and a seconder. We'll debate those in favour. Okay, we're all good now? Okay. Everybody's in favour with the exception of Councillor Scanlon. Thank you, councillors. It's now carried. Now move to item C 1.3 and Councillor Kiley invoking the sunset clause on any further capital expenditure of Midland Oval from the 2021 financial year. Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor, my motion is that Council resolve to not proceed with the borrowing of $6,595,000 or transferring the $100,000 from reserve for public works on Midland Oval in the 2021-22 budget year, both being part of an anticipated $50 million required over the following 10 years for capital expenditure. Number 2, direct the CEO to report back to Council at the June Council meeting on the desirability and capacity of the City of Swan to invoke the sunset clause as provided in the business plan on the basis that the venture has been unable to, and I quote, raise the funds required through market rate sales required to justify any further expenditure for construction of public works. Number 3, direct the CEO at a future meeting of Council to present an alternative strategy to resolve the funding shortfall through other means such as borrowings, public-private partnerships, joint ventures or grants as provided for in the approved business plan. 4, before providing an alternative strategy for funding of the Midland Oval commercial venture back to Council, undertake public consultation on the draft alternative strategy and provide a summary of the feedback to Council, The reasons for the motion as councillors: 1, in accordance with the approved Midland Oval redevelopment precinct business plan, the City is prevented from further capital expenditure upon this commercial venture, as our own business case states. In the event that Council resolves to proceed with the construction of public works, it will need to have achieved appropriate funding through prior sales revenue in the first instance. Number 2, as no further significant sales have occurred and any further public works will have to be paid for via borrowings, the City would have to first determine a sunset date in accordance with the approved business plan. Number 3, the Midland Oval redevelopment is a commercial venture undertaken by this Council on behalf of ratepayers. If this commercial venture is not commercially viable, then we as a Council may not be compliant with the approved business plan and will be seen as not spending ratepayers' money appropriately or in their best interest.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Catalano. Anyone against? Declare it carried. You put your hand up to second it in the first instance. Okay, Councillor, now go on to item... It's carried.
Okay, thank you.
C 1.4, Councillor Johnson, proposed policy mayoral dinner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to request the CEO to create a policy to govern the mayoral dinner event. The CEO to consider including in the policy the future purpose of the mayoral dinner is to advocate for funding for the City of Swan to state and federal MPs, B, reward service to the community by outstanding members of the City of Swan community, C, report to the community on the City of Swan's achievements during the year and future plans, 2, that the invitation list include A, at least 50% of the guests should be residents of the City of Swan who have demonstrated a high standard of service to the community and their partners, B, state MPs and federal MPs whose constituencies overlap with the City of Swan boundary and their partners, approximately 16, C, City of Swan councils and their partner or guest, 30, D, CEO and executive managers and their partner or guest, 10, freemen of the city and their partner or guest, approximately 10, staff who have made exceptional contributions on their partner or guest, 6, G, one special guest as determined by the Mayor and their partner or guest. 3, guest nominations, guests in the service category to be nominated to the CEO by councillors and staff. B, a guest list be drawn up and presented to council in confidential agenda for approval. 4, the invitation list to no longer include CEOs and mayors of neighbouring councils unless there is a very good reason to include them. 5, food and beverage. The food should be simple, straightforward, inexpensive food. B, wine and beer shall be made within the City of Swan boundary. 6, lighting and decoration. The Midland Town Hall's existing lighting and decoration is sufficient. Budget. The City to consider a low-cost approach to this event. 8, contributions to cost. Councillors to pay for their own and their partners' dinner. 9, advocacy. Councillors to be briefed on the attendees and any advocacy from the advocacy priority list that it may be beneficial to do. 10, frequency. Consider holding the dinner every 2 years instead of annually. 11, speeches. The Mayor shall make a speech. The CEO shall make a speech. The special guest may make a speech. 12, entertainment. There is no need for paying entertainment. 13, master of ceremonies. The event should be emceed by the Deputy Mayor. The reason for the motion is to establish a clear purpose for the event and to ensure that there is value in the mayoral dinner through reducing the cost and clarifying the benefits.
Seconder, Councillor Kiley. Anyone against?
I am.
Against? Okay. We should debate it. Yep. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, councillors, I do think we need to consider reforming this dinner and clarifying what it's for. My motion seeks to increase the value of the event by reducing the cost and increasing the benefit. The last dinner, I didn't see or hear any advocacy going on. Maybe some people did, but I didn't notice any. On my table, there was a CEO and his wife, the Mayor of Belmont and his wife, and the CEO of Midless and her husband. There wasn't really any advocacy possible, although I had a good evening. Prior to the dinner, I did ask the Mayor, Councillor Bailey, who was going to be on my table. He told me I would find out at the dinner who was going to be there. I asked if I had any advocacy duties at the dinner, and I was told no, you'll be all right. So if the purpose of the dinner was advocacy, I didn't need to be there. It appears that
I'm just going to clarify one thing there. You did not ask me if you had advocacy duties. You asked me at 2:30 in the afternoon if I could send you the current advocacy list.
No, I had the list.
So clarify that. So carry on, please.
No, I did have the list. I'd already read it in case I had any advocacy duties. What I was after was who was going to be there that I had to advocate to. It appears that a number of the state MPs who were invited did not attend, and I understand the only state or federal elected representatives were Dr Anne Ailey, MP, Federal Member for Cowan, the Honourable Alana Croacy, MLC, the Honourable Matthew Swinburne, MLC, the Honourable Ken White, AM, MP, Federal Member for Hazlitt. So there seem to be a few missing. The other question I got is, why do we need to invite mayors and CEOs from other local governments? They're not going to give us anything except invites to their mayoral dinners. What I'd like to see is considering inviting members of our community who have given outstanding service as a reward. So, for instance, this year, we could have invited doctors, nurses and cleaners from emergency departments who faced COVID without PPE in 2020. Or we could have invited volunteer firefighters who gave service at the Wirraloo event. Then there's the issue of cost. So I advised the CEO before the meeting I'd be paying my own way. I was told the cost of it this year would be $250, which is the most expensive dinner I've ever paid for in my 22 years in Australia. I think all councillors should pay their way at the dinner. Then there'd be a lot more focus on the cost of it. I think the food could be a lot simpler and lower cost. What's wrong with spaghetti bolognese or fish and chips or something like that? And the event needs to have a clearer purpose. If it's advocacy, we need to make sure our state and Commonwealth MPs attend. We should also restart significant community attendance, and we need to get the cost down. And one way to get the cost down is councillors pay their own way. It's a great tradition, but it needs reforming. Thank you.
Councillor Kiley is the seconder.
Nothing further to say, Mayor, other than I did have a good night that night, and I did spend a lot of time away from my partner, my invited guest, who was a representative from the Kiara suburb, who has been involved in the community for a very long time. I was probably a bad partner because I went around pressing the flesh with a number of people and engaging with a lot of people in the room. So I thought it was a good event, and it does provide that opportunity. But Councillor Johnson's motion simply tightens it up a little bit, makes it clear that we're spending ratepayers in the interest of ratepayers, and it can achieve better results for the council and for the ratepayers. But I think it needs to be clearly identified what those goals and aims are. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano, against the motion.
Thank you. Well, everyone in this chamber knows my view on the current status of the mayoral dinner. But I think the motion before me is it's tinkering with the mayoral dinner. And it's tinkering with the mayoral dinner in a way too prescriptive manner. So it's actually becoming something completely different. It's not the mayoral dinner. So I think really instead of kind of making a mishmash of mayoral dinner, when actually we should be perhaps thinking about, and I did raise this when I brought that motion to this chamber, that in fact what we need to do is be looking at a completely different event for this advocacy work that apparently goes on there, and for the to achieve these outcomes, these networking outcomes that apparently are achieved at the mayoral dinner, but which I think can be achieved in a much more lighter, well-lit and business and professional kind of environment. So I think that the advocacy I'd like to see that done in a completely different event, and I really would like to see that. I think that would be fabulous. And as far as the mayoral dinner, well, I think we need to be thinking about that in terms of one of those events that people can buy their tickets to go to, just like the original mayoral ball that is supposedly the tradition that we're talking about that started 100 years ago in this town hall. That was actually an event. It was a ball, it was a dance, it was an event that people paid to go to. And that is about, in fact, a celebration of community, it's a celebration of, those people coming together in that way to celebrate, their community and the town hall and the event. It's something completely different. It's a social event. So I don't want this motion to just mix it all up and then we've got what is effectively a hodgepodge event that actually doesn't really fulfil either outcomes. If we're going to have a social event, by all means, put out tickets and people buy their tickets on Ticketmaster or whatever it is, and if there's no more tickets left, they go on the waiting list just like you do for every other event, and that can be the annual ball. That's fine. City of Swan don't have to put a lot of money to it. Maybe they can donate the hall. They can, possibly, provide some in-kind support. Great. That's a lovely celebration. That's a lovely social event that anyone from the City of Swan can attend. That's part of the tradition, and that is actually where the tradition started. And then back to an event, an advocacy event, a serious, business-like professional advocacy event. I really would like to see that happen, and I'd like to see that happen in a kind of environment where we can have those kind of serious discussions, bring in all kinds of people from the community, as well as the VIPs and other important people that we need to be networking with. And that's not the kind of event that you need to be providing very expensive meals at and entertainment and all these other things. This is an event that achieves outcomes, and it should achieve outcomes that can be measured. So thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. Councillors, at the September 23, 2020 meeting, I was one of the 6 councillors who voted for the mayoral dinner not to take place in 2020 or 2021. And obviously we were all outvoted and the dinner went ahead in April. I chose not to attend and burden the ratepayers with the above average cost that's not really within most ratepayers' entertainment budget of $250 per person. I do not feel like I missed out on anything by not going or doing so. I've not heard of any benefits flowing onto the ratepayers from that dinner taking place. And as there not seemed to be any appetite from the majority of councillors to cancel the dinner outright, I think that the review from Councillor Johnson as proposed is essential. At the time, other organisations in the City of Swan and Pearce Ward held other functions to help raise money for bushfire relief, and we didn't. I attended 88.5's trivia night to help raise money. I didn't see any events organised by the City of Swan. As there seems to not... so this will allow us to at least examine exactly what the dinner is for and what spending the $60,000 on annually achieves for ratepayers. At the moment, it seems to me we're putting on a dinner and we're not really sure what it achieves. How does sitting at a table with the CEO or the Mayor actually help our ratepayers? So will the state government really only fund our key projects if we give our local MPs a dinner? I'm more than happy to attend a ball open to the public, as Councillor Catalano stated, if tickets are sold. I'm happy to purchase my own and my partner's. And if they are full for that particular event, I'm happy for the City of Swan to run a second event. Perhaps maybe, if it's so popular, run a second ball for the end of the year, or maybe a family picnic where other ratepayers have the opportunity to be able to have the time to talk to their local councillors and CEO and other invited guests. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to add a few points to Councillor Catalano's speech, which I wholeheartedly endorse. Since I've been on council, I have questioned the expenditure of the mayoral dinner. I have great concerns about the expense, and the dinners I have attended, I'm not convinced were necessary to advocate for the City of Swan. So I believe in 2021 we're facing some difficult times. I believe that the economic times have changing and we do not know, we're not out of COVID yet, we do not yet know what the future holds. And I believe there are ways we can advocate which don't cost the ratepayer so much money. I happen to disagree about the City of Swan putting on a ball. I would like to see some options come to council for other ways to advocate, but that is for another motion. Right now, I'll be voting against Councillor Johnson's motion, and in the future, I'd like to raise that we do cancel the mayoral dinner. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion. Speaker against. Any speakers for or against? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. I think there's some good information in the proposed motion, but I can't agree to it in its entirety. I think we do need to look at the cost and perhaps having it at a venue away from the town hall where we've got to bring everything in. I'm not suggesting, but if we had an outside venue that already had the staff and the food and the catering, we wouldn't have to bring in the lighting, the decorations and what have you. So I think we should be looking at other options to keep the cost down, but I do believe, having been mayor and having hosted 2 mayoral dinners, it is a key part of our advocacy priorities. Now, this year, as mayoral dinner was different to the 2 that I was fortunate enough to host, and I've just quickly written down since I re-entered the chamber, 9, including 4 federal members and 5 local members who attended that. And in that year leading up to the election, the federal election, the city was granted over $850 million in federal grants for key projects that are going ahead right now, being constructed. That is the importance of the advocacy, where you can sit down and in previous years, the CEO would also give a speech talking about the projects that we had coming up and how we can't do it by ourselves. We do rely on state and federal funding because we only get 3% of revenue coming in out of all taxes or rates. So we rely on our state and our federal counterparts. So to have them all in the one room at the one time, hearing a clear message how they can assist the residents of the City of Swan, I think it's a key advocacy priority. Is it the be-all and end-all? I can't say that, but it is actually a key factor. In 2019, I made sure I had a big Indigenous focus on the mayoral dinner. The entertainment were Guy Gauss and Gina Williams, and they were just unbelievable. We had key Indigenous organisations there, and I noted that this year again 3 or 4 Indigenous communities, community leaders from Midland were present. So I think there's a balance between getting it right. I think the mayoral dinner does play an important role in our advocacy priorities. I don't think we need to have paid entertainment. I agree with point 13. Perhaps we should have our own MC for the night to save costs. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board. I can't support this policy. I think it's a little bit too restrictive. Just like if you were hosting a function at your house, you should be able to have more input into who and what you can invite and what you can serve. I don't think spaghetti bolognese and fish and chips is an appropriate meal, but I think that we could look at some better cost savings. So I can't support your motion. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Any further speaker for or against? Councillor Zoll, speak on this occasion. Speaking against the motion, to give you some insight on the event that we currently just ran. Most significantly, the Queen's Representative of Australia, the Governor-General, made a particular effort to attend this function. They changed their entire schedule for coming to WA to come a day early. You might think it's a big deal, you just got a different plane, but it's not. The Governor-General flies with the RAF. They had to change a whole heap of protocol for the Federal Police to be here. It was a huge effort because he saw the significance. And I had spoke to the Governor-General during the fires, and that was the reason he came to visit us. By way of who attended, there were 9 non-for-profits, 3 Indigenous leaders from 3 different groups, 4 different multicultural groups, 82 ratepayers, 12 business groups, 2 chambers of commerce, and 2 that I would class as historians from right across the city. So the reach we had and the recognition we had within those groups is significant. The contacts that were made there were significant. We had people in our non-for-profit sector that hadn't previously met, and they were able to discuss and sort out some issues that they had. And there was 3 of them that I know are now speaking to it for the first time since they got together at that particular event. But this event was significant in the fact that we celebrated our 21st and our 120-odd year. It was significant because of the year we'd just been through with COVID and a catastrophic bushfire. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but remember, 79 houses from residents of the City of Swan was lost. It was significant. We celebrated the achievements that our city and our staff were able to pull off in that event. We celebrated our city's history in a hall that is significant to our history. The connections that came out of that will be seen for some time. The results of those connections will be seen for some time. So I can't support Councillor Johnson's motion, but I will remind him it is called the mayoral dinner, not Councillor Johnson's mayoral dinner. Thank you. There are no other speakers. Councillor Johnson.
Mr Mayor, last week I asked you if you could help us understand the advocacy of the mayoral dinner, and you explained some relationships that developed from that, but I'd like to ask you what specific advocacy outcomes came from the mayoral dinner.
Like I told you last week, Councillor Scanlon, I'll prepare a report for Council at some point in time. Councillor Johnson, you can close the debate. Councillor Zeno, I'm sorry. You wish to speak? I'll grant you that. I didn't see your hand. Councillor Zeno, go for it.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I raise to speak against the recommendation that's been put forward by Councillor Johnson. Similar to my co-councillor, Councillor Lucas, I agree that there are some good points contained in this motion, but overall I just can't support it. I'd just like to say that the mayoral dinner has been a traditional event that has occurred since the local authorities way back, over 100 years. Now, back then, yes, it was called a ball and people bought tickets, but over the years it obviously changed, and it became an event which was a major event for the local authority. Now, the mayoral dinner is not what some people or councillors think it is. In my opinion, the mayoral dinner is the major event that happens at the City of Swan, and it's for a prime purpose. The prime purpose of the mayoral dinner is to thank and acknowledge the efforts of our numerous volunteers and community groups. It's also to acknowledge and thank the support that we get from our state and federal members of Parliament, the support we get from our neighbouring local authorities. Councillors, you may not be aware of the benefits this council reaps from these people. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for the benefits that we reap from state and federal members and the support that we get from our neighbouring councils, this council would not be providing the facilities for the community and the ratepayers that we do, because we wouldn't have Swan Active. We wouldn't be building a $50 million complex in Ellenbrook. We wouldn't have the Ballajura Community Centre and Aquatic Centre. We wouldn't have the Altone Centre, because this council cannot afford these projects. We wouldn't have things like Northlink. We wouldn't have the extension of major roads, because as a local authority, we rely on our neighbouring local authorities to go in and support us at a federal and state level to get grants. Because if we had to rely on ratepayers' money, then I can tell you something, there would be a lot of very angry ratepayers out there, because their rates would be over the top. So the mayoral ball, or the mayoral dinner, is to acknowledge and thank the numerous volunteers. Does anyone in this room know how much the volunteers do for the City of Swan? How much does it equate to? Well, you don't think about it, but it equates to tens of millions of dollars that this council would have to pay if we didn't have those volunteers. And now you're telling this council you can't acknowledge these volunteers, you can't thank them for the work that they're doing? That's ridiculous. Therefore, councillors, I think that you need to wake up, take the blinkers off, because a measly $30,000 or $40,000 that you pay for a mayoral dinner to thank these people, one grant, Stock Road or the bridge on Lloyd Street, $20 million, $30 million. If you had to get that money from ratepayers, as I said, what would you do? And then you can't turn around and invite those people to a dinner and thank them. Councillors, it's crazy. This council should be bending over backwards to thank their volunteers, to thank the community, and to thank everyone that comes out and helps. And the ratepayers should be supporting us 100%, because otherwise the money would be coming from their rates.
Thank you, Councillor Zeno. Any other speakers for I get Councillor Johnson to close? A question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, I'd just like to ask, perhaps to the staff, if the City of Swan does hold any volunteer thank you days or anything to support the volunteers, and also how many volunteers are in, or actually, don't worry about how many volunteers are invited to the mayoral dinner. And my other question through you to the staff, please, is how do other local governments advocate? How do they receive funding from state and federal governments when they don't hold a mayoral dinner? How do they do it?
No. Okay. seriously, Councillor, you don't know the volunteer functions that we hold?
Yes, I'm aware there is
another one on
something,
Thursday
but I
this
don't
week.
know exactly how many we do hold. And I didn't realise the mayoral dinner was a volunteer. Thank
Take
you.
on notice, and we'll give you a whole list of them, Councillor.
Swan Community Care for starters.
Yep. Christmas volunteers event in Town Hall. Another one on this Thursday. There was one held last night, yesterday. So there's plenty of them.
Thank you.
And your other question, how do other local governments, unless we've been there, I don't know that we would know. So.
Other local governments do receive funding from state and federal governments.
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think $890 million worth. Councillor Richard, you got a question?
Question, Mr Mayor, to you. Can you please explain how the Mayor of Canning benefited the mayoral dinner as not being a volunteer, what association we have with the City of Swan? Thank you.
Like Councillor Zanino quoted, we work closely with the City of Canning on regional issues, and I speak with the Mayor of Canning on local issues on numerous occasions. So we've worked closely together with him, and I think my two predecessors have also worked with the Mayor of Canning, probably my predecessors prior to that.
Then who issued the invitation then to the Mayor of Canning? Who made the decision to issue that invitation?
The guest list is drawn up by the Mayor and the CEO. So, okay. Councillor Johnson, you wish to close?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I find myself in a very unusual position in responding to the debate. It's the first time ever I find myself in a situation where I've put up a middle-of-the-road kind of motion, so I'm caught in the middle. I'm caught in the crossfire. So it's like and I've been on the receiving end of two different straw man arguments. So one group of councillors who favour the dinner arguing against cancelling it, and those who want to cancel it arguing against the dinner. But that's not the purpose of my motion at all. My purpose of the motion was basically to reform it in case we lose it. So, councillors, all traditions are a good thing. They're part of the heritage of the City of Swan. And what I suggest is we just move with the times. We adjust it. My motion is not prescriptive. It says, request the City to create a policy to govern the mayoral dinner event, the CEO to consider including in the policy. The CEO might ignore all that and come up with something different and put that to council. So I'm just making some ideas, coming up with some ideas. So just to respond to one or two comments, these straw man arguments. One is how terrible it would be if we did not invite volunteers. In my speech, I said we should invite the volunteer firefighters who attended the Woolloomooloo event, or we could invite the nurses, cleaners and surgeons on the emergency ward. So I'm not proposing to do that. My motion suggests that 50% of the seats would be for community members. They could be all different kinds of community members. They could be volunteers, they could be CEOs of community groups, they could be people who feed homeless people, it could be all kinds of people. My motion proposes that it keeps its advocacy function. I'm not proposing to abolish the advocacy function, not at all. I'm intending to enhance it. In fact, I actually think that the advocacy, together with the community recognition, would be the entertainment. We would learn about the great work that the city has done, and that would spread through the community. And likewise, our guests would learn about the great work that our volunteers and community groups do, all different types of community group. My other interesting thing I noticed on the night, just drawing on what Councillor Kiley said, my wife was unable to attend the event, so I brought along a guest. And my guest was a well-known community personality from Vivash. And my guest had a tremendous time. She discovered she knew so many people there. She spent the entire evening going around different tables, talking to people she hadn't seen since she was at school, or she'd studied with, or a long-lost relative. So I found that quite actually fascinating. And I think by inviting more community people along, we get that kind of sparking. And my guest thought that the event was really good. My concern is that the reason for bringing this motion is I'm hearing that some councillors don't favour the dinner. So what I did was to put together some ideas that I thought would make the dinner more palatable, there's a good pun for you, councillors, to the community by just suggesting some ideas to
Councillor
improve
Johnson,
it.
Thank you. That's your 3 minutes. Now put the vote. Those in favour? Of Councillor Richardson, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kiley. The rest are against. Motion is lost. That takes us now to C1.5, site remediation, Midland Workshops, junction of Copperhead Road and Lloyd Street. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, it's Copper Shop Road, Mr Mayor. That council resolved to request the CEO to write to the state government and ask the government to remove to a safe landfill site the toxic waste from the old Midland Workshops that is stored at the junction of Copper Shop Road and Lloyd Street, Midland. The reason for the motion is the Midland should not be used as a dump for toxic waste, especially in a site so close to the Helena River.
No seconder. Councillor Scanlon. Is there anyone against? Declare carried. Now move to item C1.6, which is myself, donation to the Lord Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund for Tropical Cyclone Saroja appeal. Hand over to Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillors, I move that Council resolve to contribute $10,000 to the Lord Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund set up for the recovery of the recent tropical cyclone Saroja to be funded from savings from the members of Council budget. The reason for the motion is that the Lord Mayor's Disaster Relief Fund has now been activated to support those affected by Tropical Cyclone Saroja. Other local governments and community members from across Western Australia have been generous to the City of Swan in responding to our own devastating bushfires. The City of Swan would like to acknowledge the terrible damage and distress resulting from Tropical Cyclone Saroja and make a contribution to the recovery efforts.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I'll declare it carried, and I'll hand back to you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. That now takes us, councillors, to C17, which is Councillor Scanlon, opening of committees of council meetings and council briefing sessions to the public. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So my motion reads that the council resolve to request that the CEO prepare a report for council on the merits, resourcing, implications and logistics of A. Making all committee of council meetings open to the public. B. Holding all committee of council meetings at the council chambers so they can be live streamed and recorded. And C. Making some council briefings open to the public. The reason for my motion is to increase the visibility of council's governance role to the community and provide greater opportunities for information sharing and public participation.
Seconder. Councillor Johnson, I think you were first. Is there anyone against? Councillor Parry, you want to debate it? Okay. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very keen to hear the debate on this, and I believe there may be some points that other councillors would like to raise, and I would like to let them know that I'm happy to consider any amendments they may have. Now, in saying that, this motion is about increasing probity and transparency in local government at the City of Swan. These are two things that the community repeatedly have told me they are very important to them. I'd like us to consider to keep the faith in our community that we are operating to the highest level of accountability. Unless we are open to the community, they don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And this is what leads to questions. This is a key to proper functioning through transparency and accountability. It's the intention of the Local Government Act 1995 that councils conduct business and make decisions openly and transparently with a high level of accountability to the community. In accordance with 5.23 of the Act, all meetings of any committee to which a local government power or duty has been delegated need to be open to the public, or identify the relevant reason for closing the meeting or parts of the meeting to the public. Now, at the City of Swan, there is currently no requirement to open committee meetings to the public where there is no delegated authority. I've taken this from the officer's report. However, the department advises that local governments should have a strong commitment to the principle of meetings being open to members of the public so they are fully informed and, where appropriate, involved in the decisions and affairs of council. There's a range of ways that councils conduct their business, and to find out how other councils are doing this, I did a little survey. I called a number of local governments in the area. So, You know, I knew that a few local councils did have open briefing sessions and agenda forums like we do, and I was surprised that I didn't get one single negative response. Every single local government I called have their briefing sessions open to the public. I was really surprised. So I called, there was the City of Perth, the City of Bayswater, the City of Canning, the City of Stirling, the City of Wanneroo, the town of Bassendean, and then I gave up. I thought, it seems that everyone is doing this but us, so I think we need to consider this is the way the sector is going. So on our website, it says under governance and transparency, the City of Swan is an open and transparent local government providing opportunities for our community to take part in decision making. So the public expects details of how we make our decisions. They expect to know how we initiate processes, and how we provide that information to them matters most. Transparency enhances communication, and one of the greatest things we can do as councillors is facilitate communication with our ratepayers. So furthermore, the best decision making is a result of multiple perspectives, including the perspectives of community members. Based on their comments, government officials can incorporate necessary changes. The value in two-way communication is that it shows the local government is listening and responding to the community's needs. So I'd like to now leave it to the opposition, listen to me, excuse me, to councillors opposing this motion, and I'd love to hear their thoughts and how we can respond to that. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Scannell, I'm not going to speak against your motion. I am the seconder. Councillors, this is something that I've previously addressed a long time ago when I first got on council. I was surprised by how many committee meetings there were that were not open to the public. And the reason it was a surprise to me was I found two things when I was elected as a councillor, was that this sounds a contradiction in terms. We don't have a committee system, and I think those councillors who know what I mean by that realise we don't have one. We just have the basic statutory committees and a few thrown in. The other thing I found was that, based on my observation of Waverley Council in New South Wales, I only went to one committee meeting there as a member of the public, but that would be a bit strange, wouldn't it, for us here? We don't normally allow members of the public into our committee meetings, except perhaps BFAC. The real shock for me was I turned up at the safety committee for some reason. I got invited along by my local councillor to find that I was expected to sit round the table with the councillors as a member of the public. So there was no red rope system. In a committee meeting of this nature, you sat with a community type committee, you sat down with the councillors. They voted, they were the only ones to vote, but we could speak just the same way as they could. So it's not so unusual, it's not so difficult. We can do it. It'd be great to be more open to the public. We've got a really suitable, modest-size council chamber. Councillors who've been to look at the way other councils work, this chamber can easily be reconfigured. It's done that way for JDAP. It'd be possible for a small committee meeting for the presiding member to sit somewhere here, and for the committee members to be around the table, and for the public gallery to be over there. Let's give some examples of the benefits. I think the situation we've got to with that subject that we passed a motion on earlier on, the Midland Oval. When I joined council when I was elected, I discovered that we had the Midland Oval Commercialisation Committee, which of course had been meeting behind closed doors for quite some time. And I felt quite strongly that this would be a committee that really ought to be open to the public, and I did ask a few questions. And that's where we got to this. I got told there's no requirement to open it to the public. There's no requirement to open it to the public because it doesn't have delegated authority, so you don't have to open it. But councillors, there's no requirement to open it to the public, but you can open it to the public. And that was the point I made at the time. But then there was only me, and I got told, nah, sorry, councillor, that's not the way we do things around here. There's no reason why those Midland Oval briefings could not have been given to the community, and then the feedback the council would have got would have led to very different decisions back then, I think. I'm getting a feeling, actually, I get this sort of feeling from some councillors, it's coming to me, that they feel that their role will be usurped if they somehow are losing their unique access to information. Far from it, councillors. You've still got your vote, but you're sharing the information where it can be shared, because not all information can be shared with the community, because some of it's confidential, but quite a lot of it's not. So let's give an example of a committee meeting that works perfectly well in this chamber, and that's the Bushfire Advisory Committee. It works perfectly fine. It's open to the public, lots of firefighters turn up, and interestingly, they all go to the bar afterwards. But don't worry, councillors, they don't drink too much of it, because firefighting is, of course, not something... firefighters don't drink very much. Now, I know some councillors must be thinking, and this is, I'm getting this vibe, what about the Audit Committee, councillor? Well, when I was on the Audit Committee for 4 long years, a very interesting committee it is too, we weren't even publishing the minutes. I actually had to move a motion to publish the minutes. The minutes of the Audit Committee are required to be published, but we didn't publish them. And that was quite a controversial thing to do. And I remember saying, well, at least it proves we've got an Audit Committee, because we're not even announcing we've got the meetings. The only evidence of an Audit Committee is in the special meeting of Council, where we elect members of the Audit Committee. Councillors, you could still have the Audit Committee in this chamber, open it, and then anything that is confidential, you could just say, sorry, members of the public, we're now moving into closed session, and off you go. Now, it's entirely possible the entire meeting would be confidential, but some of it's not. There's no reason why people shouldn't know that it's happening. Councillors, I think we need to recognise that we've got to move with the times here. I think all our committees should be held in this chamber. It's convenient for councillors, it's convenient for the public, and I must admit, I don't think the facilities we've got in the admin building are not really that good for committee meetings. I think this is a better location for committees. I'm sure at some point in the past...
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That's your 5 minutes.
Can I just... Our last sentence, Mr Mayor. We've paid for this chamber, so why don't we use it? Let's invite the public in to see us at work in our committees.
Thank you. Councillor Parry is Speaker against the motion.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to go line by line through all the committees, actually, if you don't mind. So the TRC, every time we got elected, so TRC, the Tender Review Committee, we go through that. We open up to the public, then we close it down after 1 minute because of the fact that we have contracts that we need to negotiate, and that's needs to be confidential in regards to that. That's the rule required, so that's why it can't be publicly open. Audit Committee, I loathe, and as much as there's lots of confidential information that we have in regards to the Audit Committee as well. That's a fact. We don't want exactly to give all our bad news out to the public and say these are all the issues that we have. Next one is CEO's Performance Review Committee. Now, I wouldn't mind that public. Only joking, Jeremy, Mr CEO. But in saying that as well, I'm sure Mr CEO would respect a little bit of privacy in regards to how his performance review would be going as well. I think that's important. Number 4 is Swan Development Committee. Now, there's people that that can be opened up if you like. I don't know much about it, so I won't make a comment in regards to that. Events and City Relationships Committee. There are citizenship issues. There's also people that get chosen as award winners and everything else like that. Discussions are had about individuals as well. I don't think that should be open up to the public. Roadwise Advisory Group. Now, I don't mind that being in the chamber halls, but in saying that, there's 5 community members. Maybe they don't want to be videotaped as well. They don't sign up for this to be videotaped in regards to this. That's an issue. In regards to Waste Advisory Committee, same thing again, community representatives. Maybe they don't want to be signed up as well and taking videos of. I don't mind it, but that's what they may have. Reconciliation Action Plan Advisory Group. Maybe that has some confidential information. I don't know much about that, Councillor Prodovnik, but I'm sure there's certain issues that may not be raised in public or whatever there is as well. There's also other items such as held or such as... Sorry, I'm just going through the list here, councillors. Sorry, that's councillors. So, for example, the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee, that's held in Bullsbrook. It's been inconvenient for them to be held in the Midland Chambers. That's an issue for them too. So there's other issues. The Ellenbrook Community Advisory Group, that's held in the Ellenbrook Place office, not held in Midland. The City of Swan, as we keep saying, is a diverse place. We need to go to the local areas as well to have these committee meetings. And I agree that we should have some transparency in regards to this, no question about that. But it's not just about it's also about people that want to help our community to help them as well by holding in places that are important to them too. We can't be too Midland-centric in regards to everything we do within the city of Swan. We can't put everything there. There are local issues that need to be discussed in local places as well. That's what I believe as well. And there's certain things like, for example, these issues are just as important as well. Openness and transparency is important, but it's not the only condition that we should have in regards to this. It should be about the convenience of the people that are trying to help our community as well. So we need to consider that too. So that's why I'm voting against it, Councillor Scanlon. Thank you.
Speaker for the motion. Speaker against. Question, Councillor Colley.
Is the intent of the motion to intend that we make these public? But it seems from Councillor Parry's comments we're unable to do that in most instances. Can I get some advice? Is there any instance where we would be able to open up a meeting where we're not currently doing it?
CEO.
I think through you, Mr Mayor, I mean, there would be some committee meetings that we could, but as Councillor Parry's indicated, with the confidential matters that come before some of those committee meetings, you would have to go behind closed doors on a number of occasions to consider those matters then.
Question, Councillor Killane.
Thanks. So currently the committee meetings, the Committee of Council meetings, are they currently all held at the chambers here? The council chambers here currently? No, they're being held around. Okay. Well, maybe can I propose an amendment then? And I don't know if did you want to speak first, Councillor Congleton, before I make the amendment?
Well, you realise that this is only for a report. It's not a decision on anything. It's only to CEO to do a report. First, I request the CEO prepares a report on the merits, etc.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's just that if obviously that section B there, clause B, says holding all committee of council meetings at the council chambers, perhaps that's not appropriate given that currently committee meetings are being held elsewhere. But for the ones that are being held at the council chambers, maybe that can be live streamed and others can be open to the public.
Mr CEO, I think you want to respond to that one.
I think through you, Mr Mayor, I mean, if a report is conducted, then the logistics of actually live streaming some of those committee meetings would be contained within the report, and then council could then make a decision on those when it came back to council for consideration.
Councillor Congleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Those local governments have indicated they have open to the public videoing or open to the public for a personal visit. A lot of those have planning committees, finance committees, governance committees, and we don't. We don't have a planning committee separate. We are in the planning committee. We don't have a finance committee separate. We are the finance committee. We're the overarching body that approves or moderates or amends, the same as the governance committee. The other issue to consider here is that there's some commentary made on making all committees open to the public, which would mean that every single document we produce for every single committee has to be made public on our website for people to look at so they can understand the flow of the meeting. So we're going to go through part-way confidential stuff. How are we going to have a look at segregation of data on a website so people can understand the bouncing ball? Sitting at home and going, I'm going to listen to 5 minutes of this and not really understanding maybe some of the confidential component that either is presented beforehand or posthand in an argument. So I'm a little bit concerned at the... I understand about the transparency, Councillor, that you want to achieve, but all things in Rome are not equal, as they say, and it can't be done. If I remember, Mr Mayor, back in the old days, and I think the older mayors in the room would remember, we had planning committees and we got rid of them. We had finance committees and we got rid of them in favour of the current structure that we have. So it's not always convenient to broadcast. And in some of the commentary, Councillor, you make reference to making some council briefings open to the public. So how would we let those public members know that these are going to be open to the public and they're not going to be open to the public? Because our briefing sessions can change. They can change within a week. If someone is going to look at presenting from a developer point of view and that doesn't happen any longer and then they walk away, or we get a presentation on Diligent and the person at home hasn't got Diligent, how does that happen? And there's a quick change. So I understand your intent, but it doesn't work, I don't think, for us. Thank you.
Okay. Speaker against for the motion? Councillor Public, you're next.
I'll just keep it brief. I appreciate the issues that have been raised. I think that they are definitely worth considering. But again, this motion is it's a starting point. It's just asking for a report to be done. There's some good questions that have been raised here tonight. There's some good issues that have been raised as well. All of those could be considered in a report. It sounds like we can't do it for all committees, but it would be an informative exercise. We've got nothing to lose. I'm asking people to please support this motion.
Okay. Speaker against the motion? Speaker for? Councillor Coley.
I'll be quick. I think Councillor Congdon hit on it. I think the intent is there to make the meetings open and transparent, and that's evident in the motion itself. So I'll be supporting this. I think if the report is very brief, I don't mind, but if we can look at ways to be more open and transparent about what we do, how we and engage more with the community, whether it is putting things up online for them to look at our minutes or the like, that's a good outcome. But I think, Councillor Parry, I thank you for the work you did there on that, because it sums it up pretty well and the difficulty in doing it. So, but I think if the report came back and looked at openness and transparency, I think that's a good thing.
Any further speakers for or against? In that case, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Sorry, my apologies. Councillor Scanlon, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Fastest I've ever seen your hand move.
Oh, really? Put something else up. So I really liked the debate that we've just had now. I really liked your speech, Councillor Parry. You obviously put a lot of thought into it and reviewed all the committees. Really important issues you raised, and I really hope you saved that speech, because I want this to come back to Council. I hope that you saved your points. I hope that we can debate this further, because there are a lot of issues, and we have received staff comment about this, and I did receive assistance from staff about wording the motion so that it might work for the City of Swan. So a few questions that were raised in debate from Councillor Congdon was, how do we put some stuff up and how do we not? Well, I've had a look at the other ways local governments have done it, and Shire of Mundaring, for example, they publish on their website they have a calendar and they publish which briefings are open. And then if there's blank, it's obviously going to be a closed meeting. Obviously, we will have many closed meetings. This is not something that is new to local government, and the staff are, this is going to be in their court. They know how probity works. They know what we need to keep confidential. In terms of opening and closing meetings between public and confidential meetings, I would imagine it'd be exactly the same as a council meeting. We have our open public section and then let's go behind closed doors. Another question that was raised by Councillor Parry was his concern about community members, and rightly so, not wanting to be recorded and videoed. So I could suggest that perhaps the staff might think that they could sit in the gallery like the public do now, that they may not be live streamed like the public are now. They could ask not to be recorded. I don't know, but these are all questions for the staff for them to come back with a report. This is just a report. As I mentioned, I couldn't find a local government that isn't doing this. I'm not saying there isn't one, but I didn't find one. So what other points do I have from that? So we've got so we have it listed unless it's confidential. So we have on the City of Swan website our agendas, the council briefing agendas, and then sections which are confidential, which is uploaded into Diligent. So it would work very similar to our council meetings, I imagine. So, and I'd just like to quote something else I actually found on Diligent, and it says that the more a local government can provide in the way of transparency, the more it increases trust, honesty and integrity in the local government leaders. Don't we all want to be believed? We do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Those in favour? Councillor Scanlon, Richardson, Johnson, Bodovnik, Catalano, Kiley. The rest are against. Motion's lost. Councillor, we now need to do with a rescission motion under urgent business, and Councillor Scanlon has submitted a rescission motion on previous item of 4.10, which is proposed winery and incidental cellar door parking of a commercial vehicle at number 37 Scrivener Road. Councillor Zanino is leaving the room, has declared an interest. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I rise to raise this revocation motion, and the reason I would like us to consider to revoke the motion is that council was not presented. Would you like me to read the entire?
Read the motion, thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I was reading the reason for the motion. My apologies. Revocation motion, item 4.10, proposed winery and incidental cellar door and parking of commercial vehicle, lot 53, number 37, Scrivener Road, Herne Hill, DA 82120. Do you want me to read the entire?
No, that was as per the agenda.
Okay. So, the revocation motion reads that Council resolved to revoke the decision of Council made at 12 May 2021 ordinary meeting of Council in regard to item 4.10, proposed winery and incidental cellar door and parking of commercial vehicle. The Council resolved unanimously to grant approval to the application, and I won't read through all those words because you'll have them there in front of you. This is what I was going to be reading. The reason for the notice of motion is that Council was not presented with all the information relevant to the decision made, and the neighbouring residents all have valid planning concerns they did not have the opportunity to present to Council before making a decision. Would you like me to read Part B now?
No, no. I'm going to deal with the revocation first. I was seconding Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against the revocation motion? Councillor Lucas, there is. You wish to debate it?
No.
Okay. No one? Debate it? Okay. Councillor Scanlon, off you go.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So we were all here last Wednesday evening, and there was a number of public in the gallery, and it came to this item. They'd been sitting there silently. It came to this item. We all remember. We accepted the officer's recommendation unanimously. And then suddenly people jumped up and said, hang on, we haven't had a chance to speak, but we'd already passed the recommendation. Unfortunately, last week I wasn't quick enough off my feet to think, I can raise a revocation in meeting. So thankfully I realised the next day I could when one of the residents called me and said, hang on, what happened last night? Why couldn't we speak? We didn't realise that we had to submit anything. They didn't realise because they hadn't seen an email. They still hadn't seen the email. I'm not sure what happened to it, but it got lost somewhere along the way. So I'd like to note we have some objection from the Swan Valley Ratepayers Association. We had 8 objections or 8 submissions on this matter, and Howard Dawson of the Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association didn't realise he'd received notification of the meeting. I spoke to another objector, Roni Omar. She was a previous City of Swan councillor. She didn't realise she'd received notification. So clearly something has happened here, and many of these people have since spoken to the City of Swan, and I understand that the City of Swan is going to work on process to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So there was one of the reasons that the objectors didn't see the email if they received it was because the wording had changed. The wording on the 1st of December 2020, when they received notification of this planning application, it said proposed development associated with the construction of a commercial shed, bitumen driveway, wine cellar sales and parking of commercial vehicle. So then on April 23, those submitters who some received an email, some didn't, for some very unfortunate reason, and this title was the winery and incidental cellar door and parking of commercial vehicle. No mention of the shed in the title, whereas previously it had been. So the commercial look of the shed had not changed. What had? I don't know. One submitter told me they wrongly assumed the commercial shed was no longer part of the application because of this change. Other submitters told me that the Swan Valley Planning Committee could not approve it due to its industrial nature. That's what they had heard. I'm not sure where from. But it appears to the report the committee may have deferred their comment to city staff. In their original comments, they did say they couldn't approve it because of the industrial nature of the shed, and they deferred it to City of Swan staff, and then it appears that they approved it. I'm not quite sure how the process works with an individual committee, so I'm not involved with that committee at all. So once from there, one submitter told us that unfortunately the council process was not adequately explained to them. They turned up at the meeting to voice their concerns at the wrong meeting. And they've now discussed that with the City of Swan, and they're going to make it clearer. This ratepayer says, whilst everyone in the Swan Valley should most certainly be entitled to have a shed, the proposed construction does not have their support, and they would like to tell us why. So, through the conversations I've had with the residents, new information has come to me which council have not had in front of them before. We have not had all the information in front of us. Information includes some concern about fill on the land and that increasing the height of the shed. The ratepayers would like to come and talk about that. Another concern is protection of a Quenda sanctuary in the area. There are many things that the ratepayers would like us to consider, and unfortunately somehow they slipped through the cracks and we didn't have all the information in front of us. And, this happens. We're all human. And I think we just need to take another look at this application. We need to hear the affected residents' concerns, and we need to consider if we made the right decision. You may all decide to vote the same way. You may think we made the right decision, but let's have another look at it and consider if we did. This will give us a chance to have another look at the report, have a chat to the residents if we want, go and take a site visit. I know many or you already have done that. And I'd just like to take a moment to say thank you to those councillors who picked up the phone when I called, who responded to emails, who spoke to the residents. I really do appreciate it, and I know they really appreciate your time. So...
You're nearly out of time, Councillor.
Well, why don't I just leave it there? Thank you so much.
Councillor Henderson is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, from time to time we don't get it right, and sometimes it's not just us, sometimes it's the community. They don't always pick up on the nuances of what needs to be done. I think we really do need to be sure that we have fairness in place, and the reason I'm supporting it is to give them that opportunity that they say they haven't had, and that we should make that available to them. If you look at the bigger picture, Swan Valley Planning Committee looked at some of the issues around it. As you know, it's a state government committee. Made recommendations to mitigate the efforts, and it gave a positive recommendation. If you look at our past determination on the matter, everything seemed to be ticked off with just that one exception. And I think we should allow the community that option to be able to have a say. Thank you. Only for 1 month, though.
Thank you, Councillor Enders. Speaking against the motion, Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did speak with the objector yesterday, and I also spoke with the applicant today, and went out and met with both of them today on a site visit. Funny little road. If you're coming from the wrong side, if your sat-nav sends you up the windy little limestone path instead of coming down Leonard Street. But in discussions with the neighbour who was partly objecting, and with the applicant, I really am unsure why there would be any other objection from anybody else, because you'd be very hard-pressed to even find this building once built. The building's going to be housed behind the homestead that's currently there, and I think Peter, the next door neighbour at 35, would be the only one to be able to see it if he was to wander right down the end of his paddock to attend the horses and then look across to the building. Councillor Zanino's property, you couldn't see through to that building. You even tried, even though he's not in the room and he's got a partial interest, you couldn't see it. The two-storey home, in relation to the person that made the complaints that came to the chamber the other day, you would be hard-pressed to see this building over the existing home. There's some discussion about the landscaping and screening of these semi-mature trees to hide the building itself. In talking to the applicant today, there are 16 mature trees to be planted along the one side of the proposed development, and at least 2.5 metres in height to be planted at the same time, at the time of construction, and to be maintained thereafter. So when you start looking at having the canopy of 16 trees along that length of a building, it's a substantial canopy. And I don't know what might be proposed for the under canopy growth to go along there as well. So this particular planning item went to Swan Planning twice. So it didn't go once, it went twice. And I've sat in this chamber with enough Swan Planning Committee decisions all going no, 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 no and no. And this has come up as yes and yes. And if we want to talk about precedent in the area, there is the Swan Valley market, co-op market that sits down there on Railway Avenue, and there are homes sitting right across from that. And when you have a look at the size of that Swan Valley market across from those small homes, you wonder why there wasn't a yell and a scream and a carry on when that was built. So this particular development, for those, and I don't know, how many in the room could you tell me that actually went to site? Okay, so we've got four in the room, and of those who are looking at the revocation motion, you didn't even go, with the exception of yourself. So I'm surprised if you didn't go and have a look at it, and you can't see it from an aerial shot. You actually have to be standing right where the visual componentry is. So I'm sorry you didn't have the time to go, and if your motion is successful, Councillor, perhaps you will avail yourself to go there and have a look at the property. But given it's gone through Swan Valley twice, it is going to have the 16 mature trees planted in front of it. The colour's going to be consistent with the valley colours. I can't support this. I'm sorry, I have to go with the applicant.
Speaker for the motion, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. I don't think we're debating the merits of the actual proposal in this revocation motion. What we're actually talking about here is not about whether we attended the site and the decision that was made last week. What we're talking about is about having...
I'd like to call a point of order if I can, Mr Mayor.
Just point of order, Councillor.
There was an introduction of discussions from the mover of the motion along very similar lines. So why can't I talk about the same type of stuff?
Yep.
Because what it is at debate...
Well, in fairness, the mover certainly did go along a similar path. You are partly right, but I'll ask you to continue a different vein.
Thank you. I mean, we've had this discussion in this chamber before about revocation motions, and it was very strongly pointed out that you didn't speak to the decision, you spoke to the revocation and the reason why the revocation had to be made. And the reason why the revocation has to be made tonight is because not all the information was before council. That's the point. It's not the point about whether anybody attended the site in respect of the last decision. What we're talking about in terms of the revocation is whether all the information was before council, because we have to make our decision on all the relevant information, and it was not before council. That is the reason why the revocation motion is being brought tonight, and that is what we consider in making our decision whether to agree or endorse or agree to this revocation motion. And I think, for one, that if the information isn't available to council, to councillors, to myself, then I certainly want to make sure that all the information is available to me, and I like to have it, if somebody's actually come to the council chambers and is prepared to speak to me and tell me why they've got a view on a particular issue, I actually welcome that, because that gives me the information I need to make my decision. It's not about whether I attended the site or not. It's about whether I have the information before me. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. Councillor Lucas.
I need to start off by saying that I don't agree with Councillor Catalano's statement that we can only talk to the revocation motion in the fact that because some information was not presented, it makes the decision null and void. Because if we go down that path, every decision we make in this council, you'd only have to have someone come along and say, well, I didn't put my comments in, rescind the motion because I wasn't heard. I go back to the planning issue. And when I say that, I'll just have to go back to the notes I made. The subject side is zoned rural under the Metropolitan Scheme, the MRS, and rural living under the city's planning scheme. So we're talking about a P, permitted use in that zone, and the rural, within the rural living zone, winery is an A use. The objections you've heard, they've been non-stop via phone call and emails in the last week. I had a 25-minute conversation with a lady pleading with me to support the revocation motion when I told her that I wasn't prepared to, and I had to still have her on the phone for another 10 or 15 minutes. And I had to be, not rude, but I had to say, look, at the end of the day, I'm not going to support the revocation motion. Please accept my decision. But I base this on what is fair and what is right under the planning hat that we must wear. So I decided, after getting the phone call, or in fact before I got the phone call, when I knew the rescission motion was coming, to go and visit the site. I stayed about 15 minutes. I didn't speak to the applicant or any of the objectors, but I do read with interest that the person immediately to the south and the person that would be most affected has withdrawn his complaint on the basis that the 2.5 metre trees, which was a negotiation from the Swan Valley Planning Committee, would be planted at the time of construction to try and hide the shed, which originally started off at 6.1 metres all over, and during negotiation has been reduced on one side to 5 metres. I thought that was a good concession by the applicants. Obviously, if they're going to be driving a larger vehicle, they want to seal their driveway with bitumen, and I think they've got every right to. You've seen that they want to put a small winery, a boutique winery in. Isn't that what the Swan Valley's for? Then I heard complaints about, it's concrete tilt-up. Well, if we go to Fondy's car repair on Great Northern Highway, that's concrete tilt-up. I took a drive down Hammersley Drive in Caversham. There's a similar sized building. It's concrete tilt-up, and it hasn't been painted any neutral colours. It's just grey concrete. Hopefully the owners will put some colour on it in the near future. So everything I looked at on planning grounds, can we approve the shed and can the winery be approved? Yes. Did the applicants reduce the size of the shed on one side to the winery? Yes, they have. They've agreed to put in 2.5, which is around the 8-foot mark, trees before any construction starts, and the closest person, the closest neighbour to the south, has withdrawn his objection on those bases. So on planning grounds, just to bring it back next month to have that discussion, if those councillors are interested, perhaps maybe should have gone out to the site or at least contacted the applicant or the objectors, or they contacted you. But to me, I can't support it just on the basis that they are unaware of the process, because otherwise every week or every month we make a decision in this council, someone will come up and say, well, I wasn't aware, I didn't know we had to do this. I feel empathy for them. I don't know why they didn't read the email. If all the objectors were sent an email, maybe it went into their junk box. I don't know. I don't look at my junk box. But I can't support the revocation motion because I believe the right decision was made last week, and that's where I'll leave my argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Kiley.
Mayor, I didn't really want to speak to this, but having heard the conversation around this, I just am dumbfounded that we've got councillors in the room that don't want to look at new information. And the new information that's come to light on this application is quite significant. I'm not interested in the applicant. I'm not interested in the objectors. What I'm interested in is my right as a councillor to see the information that is pertinent to the actual application. And you all should be. You all should be concerned that you haven't got all the information. Councillor Lucas' comments about on planning grounds, and that we're going to open that up to all sorts of objections to any development. In most instances, councillors, we get the information that we require from staff. But I have concerns, and I've raised them with the CEO, about information that wasn't in this report, and I'm concerned about my rights as a councillor to make sure that I get the right information, and you should be too. As Councillor Henderson pointed out, this is about fairness. It really resonated, and Councillor Lucas, you mentioned the same word, fairness. This is about fairness in information being presented to us. I don't think that I got all the information, having been out to the site. You should be too. You should be concerned that you haven't been given all information. There is significant new information in regards to this. I'm not going to argue pro the DA or not, whatever, but I think I'd like to look at this again in another month, and it's only a month's time. So I encourage you to support Councillor Scanlon and Councillor Henderson in bringing this back to Council with the right information, because I personally want to see it. And I'm concerned that that information wasn't there in the application or the information given to us. So in regards to Councillor Congdon, you mentioned that this is not really going to affect anybody, the building itself down in Swan Valley. Well, again, there could be a building or a shed or a truck depot or something in Ballajura. I wouldn't be concerned about either, because it's not in my area. You don't live in Swan Valley. There are people who live in that area who are very concerned about it, and I don't think it needs an objection.
I hate to draw a point of order, Mr Mayor, but
Yes, Councillor.
I'm a representative for the city.
Well, we're all representatives for
the.
We're all representatives for the city. So,
differential. Sorry, Councillor.
But I don't necessarily. I won't.
Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congdon is right. So could you continue down a different vein? Thank you.
Well, of course he's right. Absolutely, Mayor. We're all representatives for the city, and we should take as much interest in a neighbour who lives at a property in Swan Valley as much as we take an interest in a neighbour who lives in Ballajura.
I went there, Councillor.
I appreciate that, but your comment about that it wouldn't affect anybody or it wouldn't be seen, I just can't fathom that, because you've got neighbours who are affected by this, and we should take on their concerns. Again, it's about fairness. So there is new information that's come to light. We need, as councillors, to get that information. It's only being put off for a month. What does it matter?
Any question, Councillor McMurray?
It's to Councillor Kiley. Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Kiley, you mentioned significant information. It has come to light. That's what the words you used. It has come to light. Why isn't it here tonight to support? Why isn't it here tonight to support Councillor Scanlon? If you know that there's significant information, that's the continuation of the question, Mr Mayor, sorry. Why hasn't Councillor Scanlon produced it here tonight?
The reason I don't necessarily wish to answer that is because, or talk about the issue, is because I've forwarded my concerns to the CEO, and I haven't got a response yet as to the answer. And we can go behind closed doors if you like. I'm happy to move that if you want to talk about it.
Is it not true that the CEO doesn't vote on this issue? It is us as councillors should have access to your significant information. Thank you.
Well, happy to talk about it behind closed doors, as I said, but I haven't got an answer from the CEO. I'm not asking him to vote on the issue. I have asked a question about whether the issue is an approved development on the site or not approved, and I haven't got an answer as yet.
Speaker for or against the motion? Councillor Johnson speaking.
For the motion. Councillors, Mr Mayor, even if you believe that the decision is correct on planning grounds and you visited the site, what harm could possibly be done by delaying this decision by 1 month? We often delay planning decisions by a month so that more information can be gained. And we know on this occasion there is missing information. What benefit would there be? Well, the neighbours will get to have their say. And then they will be more likely to be reconciled to the decision, no matter which way it goes. So even if you think the existing decision is correct, and who knows, we'll find out when we hear the additional information, it's reasonable and just to let the neighbours have their say. So I think that's why I'm supporting the motion. Thank you.
Any further speakers? No? Councillor Scandon, close debate, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When I was called by the residents, I was very concerned that we didn't have all the information. I am concerned that I'm not fulfilling my obligations to the ratepayers of the City of Swan if I make a decision without having all the information in front of me. As soon as I was made aware that I did not have all the information, I knew I had to raise a revocation motion. I felt so strongly about it. I even argued with a fellow councillor about, we've got to get this revocation in now, we've got to get it in now, because it was not right. When something is not right, I must stand up and say something. It was a lesson my grandmother taught me when I was a child. If something's not right, you stand up and say something. And the objectors not having their say is not right. Now, I know that, Councillor Congerton, you spoke to an objector. There were 8 submissions on this. There is more than one neighbour concerned, and other objectors have not withdrawn their complaints. Now, I have significant concerns about some missing information, and I sent an email to staff and I have not received a response. Like Councillor Kiley, I have not received a response, and I cannot make a decision on this until I have all the information in front of me. This is just about allowing the community to come and have their say about a development that affects their lives. For this shed is of commercial nature, they say, with the landfill underneath it. It's around 8 metres high and 30 metres long. That's pretty big. That's pretty big. So, in response to the objections, the applicant said it is not a large commercial enterprise. It is a small boutique winery. But do you know what? I've not heard one complaint about the winery. All the complaints surrounding the large shed of commercial nature. This is what the residents have told me they want to speak to, and they did not have the opportunity to speak to. So I would like to ask you all to support democracy. This is what this revocation motion is all about. We need to hear from the ratepayers. We need to hear their concerns, because you cannot pass this motion without all the information in front of you, and you have all heard tonight you did not receive all the information. So if you do not support this revocation...
Your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the motion is carried. Now, Councillor Scanlon, you now go to Part B.
Thank you, those councillors who supported that decision. It was a very important one for democracy. So I'd now like to move Part B of my motion, and that is that Council resolve to defer the decision to the ordinary meeting of Council of June 9, 2021. The reason for the notice of motion is to enable councillors time to hear from the affected neighbours and for them to be able to present deputations at the agenda forum prior to a decision being made.
Seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Carried. Where's my other one? The Sheriff Shells one. Okay, councillors, we now need a motion to go behind closed doors to consider a revocation on a confidential item. Councillor Kylie, we're about to move a motion. Could you please resume your seat? Well, you probably should have checked with me before, but if you go, you'll miss it. I've got a motion to go behind closed doors. Councillor, need a mover? We'll be finished in 10. Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Parry. Now behind closed doors, so I'll ask if people in the gallery can please leave. Councillors, we haven't finished yet. Thank you. Notice of motion for consideration at the following meeting. Are there any? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that the Council write to the Public Transport Authority requesting a bus service between Bullsbrook and Ellenbrook Town Centre. The reason for the motion is that there's an increasing demand for such a service.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Catalano.
I have a motion regarding planting of verge trees for next year, so I'll speak to...
Right.
Yes.
Any other notices, councillors, to be considered at next meeting? No, thank you, councillors. We declare the meeting closed.